Have you ever woken up tired not in your body, but in your soul? That strange, invisible weight pressing down before the day even begins? You can't quite name it, but it's there, a silent exhaustion that seeps into your bones even after a full night's sleep. You're not broken, you're not alone. You're simply tuned to a frequency the world calls normal, but your spirit knows it's anything but. That heaviness, it's a signal. A quiet rebellion from the deepest part of you, whispering, "There's more. There's always been more." This message is a lighthouse for the ones who feel too much, see too deep, and can no longer pretend to be okay with the noise. If something stirs inside you right now, a flicker of recognition, a sigh of relief, don't ignore it. A like is an affirmation. A subscribe is a declaration. A comment just, "I feel this," or 777 is your signal flare, calling your soul tribe home, because here, you don't have to carry it alone. Let us unveil a profound truth, one that has the power to shift your entire reality if you truly allow it to sink in. The pressure you feel, that crushing, ever-present burden that clouds your days and steals your nights, does not come from the challenges of life itself. It is not a divine trial imposed upon you by the universe. It is not the inevitable consequence of your responsibilities. The truth is far more subtle and far more personal. This heaviness is born from the countless layers you unconsciously add on top of it. It is created from the incessant noise within your own mind, the cacophony of doubt, the phantom orchestra of worry, the endless internal debates that rage like a tribunal with no judge. Each time you replay a past conversation in your mind, searching for a flaw, you add another pound to your load. Each time you script a worst-case scenario before a single step has even been taken, you are forging another chain that binds you. Think about it. How much of your precious life force, your divine energy, is consumed each day by the relentless drive to be perfect? The insatiable hunger to be liked, to be validated, to be accepted by all those around you? The feverish, breathless race to stay one step ahead of everyone else in a game whose rules you never agreed to play? This, my friend, is the true battlefield. It is not the life that drains you. It is this silent, relentless, internal war. It is not your actual duties or obligations that leave you depleted to your very core. It is the invisible baggage that you strap to your own back every single morning, the baggage of expectations, the baggage of regret, the baggage of fear. And that is a burden the source never intended for you to carry. We all do it. Every single day, we engage in this intricate dance of self-sabotage. We overanalyze every social interaction, dissecting it piece by piece as if searching for evidence of our own inadequacy. We allow the ghosts of past conversations to echo in the halls of our minds, replaying them over and over, changing every word, every pause, every inflection. In the futile hope of engineering a different outcome, we catastrophize, conjuring tempests where there are only clouds, and bracing for the worst before the universe has even had a chance to show us its best. This constant mental rehearsal for tragedy is one of the most exhausting activities a human can engage in, and yet we practice it with religious devotion. And then there is the quiet betrayal of the self, the one that happens so often we barely even notice it anymore. We say yes when our soul is screaming a resounding no. Why? Because we fear the dissonance that an honest no might create. We are terrified of being seen as difficult, as uncooperative, or, worst of all, as selfish. So we don the armor of agreeableness, a heavy, clumsy covering that hides our true form and drains our energy with every single inauthentic nod of assent. We obsessively try to control the image others have of us, becoming the frantic curators of our own public perception, rather than simply being the raw, imperfect, and radiant truth of who we are. We polish the facade while the foundation cracks, and after performing all this invisible, soul-crushing labor, we have the audacity to wonder why we are so exhausted. We question why we feel drained, even on days when we have done nothing physically demanding. The answer is piercingly clear. You have been participating in a marathon of mental and emotional gymnastics. The truth is, life itself demands only a fraction of what we stress over. The world is not demanding your perfection, it is only asking for your presence. That voice in your head, the one that constantly scolds and criticizes and demands, that is not the voice of life speaking to you. It is not the voice of divine guidance, it is the haunting echo of your conditioning. It is the accumulated whispers and shouts from years of comparison, of deep-seated fear, and of the misguided attempt to keep everyone around you happy, everyone, except the one person who matters most, you. Let's be brutally honest with ourselves, just for a moment. How much of your daily energy, your mental focus, your emotional bandwidth is invested in managing your image? In the attempt to seem a certain way, instead of simply being, this is the invisible tax you are paying on your existence, and the cost is astronomically high. You are paying it with your focus, which is diverted from the present moment to the realm of perception. You are paying it with your peace of mind, which is sacrificed for the fleeting approval of others. You are paying it with your sleep, which is disrupted by the anxiety of what others might think. And you are paying it with your joy, which is being smothered beneath the weight of all this pretense. Is it any wonder life feels like a constant struggle? Is it any wonder every step feels like wading through thick mud? You are trying to run a marathon, but you have unknowingly strapped on a rucksack filled with stones, each one labeled with, "What will they think? Am I good enough? And I must not let them down." The moment you begin to let go of this self-imposed burden, even just a little, something miraculous happens. Things begin to shift. You start to feel lighter, not because your problems have vanished, but because you've stopped clenching them so tightly. You breathe more deeply, not because the air is purer, but because the vice grip on your chest has loosened. This transformation doesn't happen because your external world has changed. You did not win the lottery, you did not get the promotion. Nothing on the surface of your life has necessarily been altered. The change occurs because you stopped trying so hard, you stopped holding on to what was never yours to carry in the first place, and the craziest part? You did all of this without anything outside of you needing to change. You simply stopped doing the one thing that was draining you more than anything else. So what is this one thing? Most people think stress comes from having too much to do, but that is rarely the root cause. Stress usually comes from trying to do everything while pretending you're not struggling. The truth is, we exhaust ourselves not because life is hard, but because we are in constant resistance to it. We resist discomfort, believing we should always be happy. We resist slowing down, believing we should always be productive. We resist being misunderstood, believing we should always be clear and liked. We resist the feeling of losing control, believing we should always have it all together. All of this silent, internal resistance, this constant battle against the flow of life, it accumulates. It builds quietly but powerfully until it becomes a tangible tension in your body. This is where things subtly start to break. You feel a tension in your conversations, but you smile through it anyway. You feel the creep of burnout, but you push through it. You say you're fine because you don't want to unpack what's really going on. You suppress, you avoid, and you keep running as if everything is under control, all while your nervous system is screaming for air. The one thing that makes life hard, the one thing you need to stop, is the performance. Not in the artistic sense, but in the emotional sense. Performing strength when you feel weak. Performing calm when you are overwhelmed. Performing as if you have it all together when you barely slept. Your mind is a mess, and your soul is running on fumes. This performance drains you more than any task on your to-do list, because acting like someone you're not costs energy. Every mask takes effort to hold in place. And the longer you hold it, the more disconnected you become from who you truly are. Eventually, you can no longer tell the difference between the role you are playing and the self you have abandoned. But here is what happens when you stop performing. When you drop the act, even in quiet moments with yourself, you access something rare: clarity. You start to say what you truly think, not because you are being confrontational, but because you are done lying to yourself. You start to walk away from things that quietly wound you. You stop doing things just to be liked and start doing things that feel honest. It's not about becoming careless or cold. It's about no longer sacrificing your mental peace to keep up appearances. Once this shift begins, even the same old routines work, relationships, daily life start to feel different. Lighter, simpler, less like a performance and more like something real. And that's when you realize the version of you that was exhausted, overwhelmed, and anxious wasn't really you. It was who you thought you had to be to survive, but you are not here just to survive. You are here to live with depth, clarity, and presence. Think about how often you say yes when your entire body is screaming no, how often you agree just to avoid tension. You answer messages instantly, show up to obligations you didn't want in the first place, and pretend to be okay because it's easier than explaining yourself. Over time, this becomes your second skin. Not because you're weak, but because you've been conditioned to believe that your worth is directly tied to your usefulness, to how much of yourself you give away. And here's the trap: the more you abandon yourself to keep others comfortable, the more uncomfortable you become. You start shrinking, you start hesitating to take up space. Your intuition gets quieter, your boundaries blur, and your energy it leaks everywhere. Into conversations you didn't want, roles you didn't ask for, and situations that don't align with who you really are. So what happens? Life begins to feel heavier than it should. Not because the world changed, but because you gave away the power to decide how you move through it. The truth is, you can't reclaim your peace if you're still negotiating it with people who benefit from your silence. You can't access your real energy if it's always tied up in keeping others happy. Somewhere along the way, you have to decide that protecting your mental clarity is not selfish, it is sacred. And here's the deeper part. When you stop apologizing for needing space, when you stop explaining your every decision, something shifts. People either adjust or they exit. And both are forms of alignment. Life gets easier not because fewer things happen, but because fewer of the wrong things get your attention. You stop reacting to everything. You stop picking up every emotional call. You stop letting chaos knock you off center. Instead, you respond only to what resonates. You speak less, but you mean more. You move slower, but with intention. And you start choosing peace, not because you're running away from conflict, but because you've stopped running away from yourself. That's not laziness, that's power. The kind of power that doesn't need to prove itself, it just is. Most people live in a state of constant resistance, resisting discomfort, resisting silence, even resisting rest. And the strange part is, they don't even notice it. Their mind is always scanning for what's next, the next notification, the next task, the next way to prove they're being productive. It's like they're trying to outrun stillness, because stillness feels unfamiliar, too quiet, too honest. But here's the paradox. The very things you are avoiding, boredom, slowness, solitude, are often the doorways to clarity. That moment where your mind isn't filled with noise and something real can finally surface. See, when you're always in motion, you can't hear yourself think. You can't see the patterns you're stuck in because you're too busy doing to even notice them. And this is how people end up exhausted, not from hard work, but from running in circles. Life starts to change when you stop treating every impulse as a command, when you stop reacting to every thought as if it's urgent or important. Not every itch needs to be scratched. Not every opinion needs to be defended. Not every thought deserves your energy. This is where your power builds, quietly, in the spaces where you pause instead of react, where you sit with discomfort long enough to realize it won't destroy you, where you feel the urge to respond, to fix, to control, and you don't. You begin to learn that peace isn't something you chase. It's something that's revealed when you stop doing everything that disturbs it. And it's not always dramatic. It's not about deleting everyone from your phone or moving to a cabin in the woods. Sometimes it's just not replying right away, or not checking your phone first thing in the morning, or letting someone be wrong about you without defending yourself. It is in the restraint, in the knowing that you don't need to jump into every fire just because it's burning. That's when things get lighter. Not because the world changed, but because your attachment to chaos finally loosened its grip. And that's a shift nobody can see, but everyone can feel. There's this moment you eventually reach, a quiet, almost unnoticeable moment, where you realize you don't need to be in every conversation. You don't need to weigh in on every argument. You don't need to make sure everyone sees your side, understands your intentions, or validates your experience. And in that moment is freedom. Because when you stop doing the mental gymnastics of trying to control how the world sees you, you finally begin to see yourself. Not through the distorted lens of outside expectations, but through your own eyes, the ones that have been waiting to reconnect with who you were before you started editing yourself for approval. Most people have no idea how heavy that pressure is until they let it go. The pressure to be impressive, the pressure to be liked, the pressure to meet silent expectations that were never even yours. They carry all this tension in their jaw, in their chest, in their sleep, and call it normal. But once you get a taste of how light life feels when you drop those weights, you can't unfeel it. That's when priorities shift. You no longer chase conversations that drain you. You no longer say yes just to avoid conflict. You stop giving people explanations they didn't earn. And the more you do that, the more your world reorganizes around you. People who truly respect your peace start to show up. The chaos doesn't disappear, but your need to engage with it does. This isn't about isolating yourself or becoming detached. It's about becoming available to what actually feeds you. Real connection, honest rest, creative thought, presence. These things don't survive in the constant storm of overcommitment and fake urgency. When you stop doing what's slowly disconnecting you from yourself, you don't just feel better. You become better, your focus sharpens, your conversations deepen, your standards rise, you become less reactive, more intentional, and people feel it. Even if they can't name it, they sense that something's different about you. You're not rushing, but you're not passive either. You're calm, but alert, soft, but unshakable. And here's the part that no one tells you. When you stop chasing the life you think you're supposed to have, the life that's actually meant for you starts to come into focus. Not louder, just clearer. You don't realize how much life was weighing you down until you start removing the things you never needed in the first place. The constant overthinking, the unnecessary pressure to always be on, the background fear that if you slow down, you'll fall behind. But fall behind what exactly? Most people are sprinting in directions they never even chose. They're chasing lives that don't match their values, because somewhere along the way, they confused movement with progress. But the ones who actually build something real, something peaceful, meaningful, sustainable, they aren't the ones chasing everything. They're the ones who have learned to edit. They trim the noise. They set quiet boundaries. They pause before reacting. And they understand something that sounds almost rebellious in today's world. You don't have to do more to feel more alive. You just have to stop doing what keeps you disconnected. Because every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you scroll mindlessly instead of resting intentionally, every time you perform instead of express, you chip away at your clarity. And clarity is what makes life feel easier. Not because the path is smooth, but because you finally see it. When you stop doing the things that sabotage your peace, something incredible happens. You begin to trust yourself again. You start making decisions faster. You stop explaining them. You take better care of your energy. You stop feeding conversations that leave you drained. And you stop arguing with reality, trying to make it softer for everyone but yourself. And the more you operate from this space, this calm, focused, uncluttered space, the more you realize life was never meant to be this exhausting. You were just never taught how to let go. So, here is your reminder. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to chase what's running. You don't have to explain what's already been felt. You just have to stop doing what keeps you heavy. Let life feel lighter, not by force, but by choice. And if this message hit you at the right time, then you already know it's time to stop carrying what was never yours. If that resonated, make sure you subscribe, drop a like, and share this with someone else who has been carrying too much. Your peace is your power. Don't trade it.